Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. We are back. As you can see, What's a Podcast, episode 248, All City Business. I am joined by one and only, I am DJ Jerome Baker III. Shout out to my man, always available, hashtag Streetwear Eddy.
What's up, fellas?
The internet's most famous
On-time Adbul.
Sneaker on-time Adbul. I was going to call him a sneaker narrator. You know what I'm saying? He's not doing voiceovers for your favorite.
We're doing a voiceover.
Yeah, you were in there too.
I didn't hear the whole, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, you cut it off that quick?
I just had to keep it moving.
Wow.
He went into the first 5 seconds. It was like, I'm not on it. I'm out.
My employment was questioned this week, so I had to keep it moving. You know what I'm saying? My loyalty was questioned this week, so I had to
you in there.
You in there, brother.
And we are also joined by a fellow proud Hamptonian, just in case anybody gets that twisted, a native Washingtonian as well. My guy for 20 plus now, Silas Grant. Please give it up for Silas Grant. 1 2 1 2 1 2. Tom, Tom, put some claps right here. Tom. Yeah, put an applause right here.
Put the thunderclap in there. Drop the elephant man's drop right there.
Yeah. Something for the applause. But thank you, Silas, for joining us, bro. We appreciate it.
Silas, we're honored, man. You know, you might not have heard previous episodes, but you know, our listeners have definitely heard your name that we've talked about, whether it's been your wellness journey or you know, some of the conversations you and Tony have on Heart of the City, and you know, so yeah, you're well known to our listeners and our friends off What's a Podcast. So welcome, brother.
I appreciate that, and I'm a listener too. I'm subscribed.
He's subscribed. He's paid subscribe.
There we go. We're in the game now, baby.
Do remember patreon.com/What's a Podcast is where you will find you know, the majority of our content. We're still tweaking a few things. I'm almost at the point where I've got it right, because you know, we want to make sure that everything is delivered to the fans and the subscribers properly. We do have our new 30-minute Monday morning podcast, Chopping Blades, going really well, and that's just adding to the content that we have to give to the people, because obviously we want to keep you informed and up to date on all things going on in this world. So with that said, we're going to just jump right into, obviously we have a special guest. Silas is here with us tonight. Silas is a native Washingtonian, I believe, from Northeast DC. Is that correct?
Yeah, Northeast. Yeah.
So Northeast DC, which again, like DC in general, just has all the flavors of the world. Anything you could want, good, bad, ugly, pretty, whatever you want, you can find it. And you know, I know there is a lot of DC is just a rapidly changing city. Kids who grew up here now might have a different experience than what was going on when you were growing up. So can you tell us about those, you know, 80s, 90s DC that we've heard so much about, and your experience, just, you know, on a day-to-day getting through it?
Yeah, man. So I grew up in Northeast DC, in what's considered to be the Edgewood/Brookland community.
Okay.
So the Dewdrop Inn, you guys have seen there.
Of course.
So I grew up like 2 blocks from the Dewdrop Inn. I recall back in the day when we rode bikes on 8th Street and nobody was back there. Right.
Yeah.
So on a Sunday night to see that many people back there, it's like mind boggling. And a lot of my homies I grew up with, you'll see them out there on Sundays with lawn chairs out on the street. Those are guys I grew up with. So, you know, that neighborhood has changed a lot. I think it was one of the first neighborhoods really impacted by revitalization. The thing about that neighborhood that's really unique is that we are right next to Catholic University. And so in the midst of Chocolate City, we were one of the only neighborhoods that really experienced what it was like to coexist with people who weren't Black.
Yeah.
Right? So
that's true.
When things started gentrifying, we weren't as impacted negatively because we had kind of been accustomed to being around college students and some faculty, UA. So it didn't hit us as hard, right? And I think for us, growing up in that area, we had a couple of train stations, so transportation wasn't ever really as much of an issue for us. It's always been an attractive area, but again, as you said, Jerome, the good, the bad, the ugly. I went to Hampton in 1997. Around that same time, a lot of my friends started really just being full-time in the streets running around. And me coming back home after like 4 or 5 years at Hampton, I saw the difference in a lot of my friends' lives, and the difference was not necessarily better, but worse. And so a lot of my community work that I'm doing today started when I came back home from Hampton and saw my friends in those neighborhoods that I frequented and the one I'm from, just, not being connected to resources, not being connected to opportunities. And it's crazy. People come here from different places and they're able to, attach to more opportunities than people who've been here their whole lives. So a lot of the work that I do out in the open and in the public has been motivated by really trying to connect people that I know and love to resources, and to really, get people up to speed with where DC is right now, because, nostalgia is death. Like, I love nostalgia to a degree, but if we keep thinking in the past, we're going to end up dying, right? Because there's no growth there. And a lot of people in DC that come from my era, they've had a challenge trying to adjust to the new DC, and I'm just trying to be the bridge, or one of the bridges, to be able to connect them.
Now, I know you are, and this is part of something we'll get into later, but there was one particular story that you told myself, Scooty, and maybe one other person about the 3 Asian kids that worked at the carryout.
Yeah.
Could you just give a quick, because I think that gives an understanding of like the neighborhoods you grew up in, and how the streets can grab some people but not grab others. Like, if you just tell that story, I think it's a great microcosm of that.
Now, that's good. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I meant to say this earlier. So growing up in Chocolate City, literally, I went to school with, maybe in my 12 or 13 years of primary school, I may have gone to school with maybe 8 to 10 kids who weren't Black, period. Mm-hmm. Right. I may have had 3 to 4 white teachers. All of my principals were Black, right? So when they say Chocolate City, literally the decision makers, the rule makers, everybody was Black, right?
Yeah.
So I went to Brookland Elementary. It's now a middle school, right across from Turkey Thicket. At the time, it was K-8. And there was one white family in the school, sister and brother, and there was an Asian family, and there were 2 sets of cousins, right? So there were 3 boys.
Asian cousins.
Yep, Asian cousins, right? So 3 boys that were brothers, and then there are 2 younger female cousins that were sisters.
Okay.
Right? 5 of them were in the school. The girls didn't stay long. They left maybe like after a year, but the 3 boys matriculated through with us.
Okay.
And they hung out at Turkey Thicket. They wore Air Max and New Balance. They dressed like us, the whole 9, right?
They were Washingtonians.
They were Washingtonians through and through. And what was interesting was that they were so entrenched in our culture, which was essentially Black culture, that we didn't look at them as being Asian.
Sure.
Right? Their family owned a carryout up on 12th Street, and I think they lived above the building. And they were really totally like, inside Black culture, to the point, just being frank, the one guy who was my age in my class, he would openly say nigga, and nobody had a problem with that, right? So we're talking like 1990, 89, 90, 91, right? Around that time period, right? So then we go to junior high school, and at the time, Brookland was K-8, but they cut it off when we got to the 7th grade going into 8th. And so we ended up having to go to 8th grade at a different school. And so we go to a different school out of our neighborhood. We stick together because we're all from Northeast. We're in a Northwest school. And he had to adjust because he couldn't be as free in a new environment as he was with us, over in that Brooklyn area, right? Uh-huh. So we kind of lost contact with one another. And his family still had the carry out up on 12th Street. And I had never gone on the carry out there before. And one day I went in there, and just to be frank, like I saw him like a year or two after we split ways as far as school is concerned. And I thought that was him behind the glass, but he didn't speak to me like we had been speaking for like the last 10 years, right? So much so that when I got to college, I met guys at college that went to high school with him. They went to a private school. And when I told them I knew him, they were like shocked. They were like, wait a minute, you know him? He didn't hang with black people in school? And I was like, yeah, he hung with us in elementary and like junior high school, like every day. I mean, basketball, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And I remember a teacher asking us in the 7th grade, why do y'all let him say the word nigga? And we was like, man, that's my nigga. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it was at the time, right? But we 12, 11 years old. But I think for me, years later, I still feel this sense of like, I want to have a conversation with him. I would love to see him, right?
Yeah, what do you think happened?
I don't know, because the school he went to, right? It's a private school, pretty well-known school here. And maybe there was some pressure there. But in the neighborhood, I can't recall him ever being mistreated. I can't recall him ever being isolated or shunned. People really embraced him, right?
Yeah.
But you don't always know how people interpret jokes or how people interpret interactions. So maybe there was something that was traumatic that I just wasn't aware of. But all the people that we grew up with, I never saw him, in my estimation, be disrespected in any sort of way. He was really one of us. And in a year or two, it was just totally different. But that whole story kind of speaks to how deep black culture was into DC culture. And you really couldn't be outside unless you embraced black culture at that time.
It's true. Yeah.
Crazy, because we see a lot of people who are just, like crews that have some of everybody out here in DC. I mean, one of the most notorious people from Washington, D.C. who, feels he's one of us is like White Chocolate, the basketball dude. Like, he's in the club all the time. And at 40-something years old, will still say the N-word with braids in his hair, 2 black girls on his arm.
Stop it.
I promise. And he hangs with official people, too.
I promise you, yeah.
Wait, he's from out here?
I think he's from Maryland, truthfully.
By here, I mean.
He out here.
Oh, yeah, no. If he goes
from PG County.
If he goes to play basketball in New York, he's representing Washington, D.C. in his mind.
That's
100%.
That brings up a good point, Rome, because I've always wondered how Washingtonians feel about this when you hear people in whether it's celebrities or just, you're out in different parts of the country and you meet somebody and they're like, yeah, I'm from DC. You get excited. You're like, oh shit, me too. Where? Mm-hmm. And they're like, Suitland or Silver Spring or so. How do you, as a Washingtonian, take that? Like, do you feel that they have any sort of right to say they're from Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, so it depends on how far away we are from D.C. when you say it. So if you and I run into each other in Egypt, and you're like, I'm from D.C., and you say like Woodbridge, or you say Sterling, or you say Olney, I get it, right?
Yes.
If we in New York and you say I'm from D.C. and maybe it's like you said, a Suitland or Oxon Hill, whatever the case may be, I kind of get it. But if we're standing with each other like on 7th and Franklin, and you tell me you from DC, and you say Silver Spring, that's different. Like it's a little, I mean, even with me, like I'm from Northeast, and depending on where I am and who I'm talking to, I'll just say DC, I'll say Northeast, or if you really from DC, I'll tell you like I grew up in the Edgewood area, and like if you really entrenched in like the street sort of culture, then I would say, I grew up on 6th Street, we hung out on 7th and Girard. So now people understand who understand, but those who don't, I don't have to get into the specifics. I will say this, I'm not really big on as a 44 going on 45-year-old man, I'm not really big on pressing somebody's line about that, right? But I do what makes me uncomfortable is if a person is not comfortable with who they are.
Yes, that was the point I was about to get to, and I was about to tie that in with actually your friend from elementary school, because I see a lot of that happen with people from different races who grew up in certain neighborhoods, and they've kind of lost sight of who they really are and the cultures, especially in immigrant families. I see a lot of that, and you know, they just kind of forget about who they are and what they really are supposed to be. You know what I mean?
Bring that up because, right, so I grew up in Northeast, but then I went to Coolidge in Northwest, right? Mm-hmm. And if you know anything about DC migration, like from the South, a lot of people from the Carolinas live in Northeast, right? And a lot of like natives, like 4th, 5th, 6th generation grew up in Northwest. And there's also like a Caribbean sort of feel uptown as well, right? And it wasn't until Facebook that I knew that guys that I went to school with uptown were actually like from Trinidad,
immigrants. Yes,
Jamaica, Haiti. They got the flags in their Facebook pages now, and I was like, "Dang, I didn't know he was." But to that point, people were kind of just
they were hiding behind it.
Yeah,
you that's I came up on my situation is a little bit different because I came to America at the age of 15, so I was already kind of knew who I was, but growing up in Baltimore County and going to Milford Mill High School, you know, it's predominantly, I would say 99% black school. I think we had like one white kid. He was the captain of the soccer team, and like one white girl. That was it. That was and me, who were the only non-black people at that school. But you know, I found out, just like you said recently, I always assumed that everybody was just black but American. But it wasn't until recently I started finding out that a lot of cats that I was in school with were West Indian, or you know, there was only one other kid, Dennis Wise, who was Liberian, and he claimed it. But other than that, and I'm from Sierra Leone, and the two of us were the only two West Africans I knew of. But come to find out, there was a lot more, but they just weren't. They were just, you know, they were from Baltimore. So, yeah, it's funny that generation of people coming up were just either scared to admit it, or just were unsure of how they would be accepted if people found out that they were not just American.
Yeah, I mean, remember, when we were kids, you want the least amount of things to divide you.
Yeah, right? You don't want any sort of friction.
And also, it's the lack of understanding from other kids. Like, I might know who I am, but them 4 dudes over there from
they might not know where I'm from.
West Baltimore, who take the bus and everything, they might not know who it is. And I don't want to have friction with them on the bus as I go home every day.
It also opens you up to a whole new set of jokes. You know what I'm saying? That you might be like, yo, I'm safe. I'm good without them.
Yeah. Of course, because, I mean, what was it? It was Boys in the Hood.
African booty
scratcher.
That was real.
God.
That was real.
That was very real, though. You know, so if you say you're from an African country, you're setting yourself up to be called an African booty scratcher.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it's on the way. Like
it's on the way.
It's on the way. You know what I mean? So, Patreon.com/What's a Podcast. Now, honestly, people, at this point, we usually sign off for the free preview because, you know, we got bills to pay and things like that. However, because we have such an esteemed guest tonight, it's like the NBA League Pass. You get a little free, you know what I'm saying? You get a free situation.
It's a pay-per-view, baby. Pay-per-view.
So it's not the whole episode isn't going to be for free, but we want to obviously, you know what I'm saying, just let you know what's really good, and we're in this bag. So,
man, pay that $5, man.
That's hey, you know, bullshit. But it is what it is. So at this point, obviously, Silas has made the fantastic decision to attend Hampton University. It's 1997. I got there in 98, so we're literally a year behind each other. And even so far as I think Silas. So my big sister I think she came either the year with Silas or the year before. I don't want to say her name, but she was in the same thing where she told me I'm from DC. Come to find out, her friend is Killer Cal, And Cal's like, she's not from DC. She's from somewhere out there in Maryland, right? And
I love Killer Cow too. That's my bro.
And Killer Cow is my man, but I'm just saying, like, you know what I'm saying? So I learned that early in Hampton. Now, mind you, this is a year later than when Silas was there, but your Hampton experience, because it's just, you know, come on now, guys.
Silas came in with DJ Envy. You were in there with Envy?
Envy's a year before me, but we were together.
Okay.
So just to kind of give you a little backdrop of some people, Young Sav from he used to be with MMG.
Yes.
Envy was there. I'm drawing a blank right now, but yeah, it was a lot of folks that ended up behind the scenes in the music industry in that era that's now, you know, doing things in entertainment. So
I know you know Siraj. You know Samir?
Yeah. Those like my big bros. Yeah.
Greatness, bro. Greatness. I'm just trying to
Hamptonians. That's the name of this episode.
Trying to tell y'all.
Yeah, them homies right there.
But
what was your first homecoming experience like? As far as I don't know. I know you're a happily married man with a beautiful family, but I mean, you know, you got to see Howard homecoming because I know you came home for that, and you've also experienced Hampton homecoming. Now, Jerome is gung-ho Hamptonian out here, but I've been to Hampton homecoming early. I've only been to one, but I've been to a whole lot of Howard HU homecomings and knew what that had to offer. But being that I think that you're a little bit more centralized, I would like to get a non-biased opinion about the two homecomings. What are your thoughts?
So, you know, I think that Howard has a big advantage of being in Washington, D.C.
In the city. Sure.
You know,
especially back then.
Yeah, like
especially back then.
Hampton back then, the city of Hampton, that whole area is not what it is today. And even today is still a step behind like a city like DC, New York, Atlanta, whatever the case may be. The beautiful thing about Hampton, though, is that if you went there, it's a different experience than if you're like on the outside as a visitor, right? People talk about Howard being Wakanda, but Hampton is really like the Wakanda experience because if you know, right? When you come off the exit and you kind of go into the campus,
hey man,
it's a different feel if you went there, right? And like you said, I'm married, I got a daughter. I'm gonna say this in the most respectful way, right? To not disrespect my family.
Of course.
In the fall of 1997, I don't think there was any larger concentration of beautiful women in anywhere on the planet than Hampton, Virginia in the fall of 1997.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously.
Wow.
The largest concentration of attractive Black women. I don't think there was any place like that. And you see, Rome, right. It's gotta be real. Like,
all right.
Yeah.
Rome wasn't there in 97 though.
I was there in 98 though.
They were there in 98 too.
Yeah, I mean, like it to me, man, like it was a different experience getting on campus and just seeing the people from everywhere. But like, definitely as an 18-year-old guy, like the girls, it was crazy. It was crazy.
You know, I'm glad we have somebody in here that knew Jerome from the college days because, you know, we come in here and Jerome goes on and on. You know, he talks, he recaps his weekend. You know, he DJ'd Heist Thursday. There's Darling Nikki Friday, whatever. You know what I'm saying? This other place on Saturday and this other place on Sunday. And we're always like, yo, you're the single dude and you are the DJ. How did it go? Like,
no doubt.
You locked something down or, you know, what happened? And he's always like, oh, no, I'm working. It's very serious business. What was our guy like in college? Like,
this isn't about me.
You know, listen, it's about everything. We're here. This is where we are right now.
So I honestly don't really remember, right? Because Rome and I didn't like hang together. We had a lot of mutual friends and we were always super, super cool. And Rylan was one person in particular that, you know, was the glue that introduced us. But it was a lot going on at that time. So like a lot of stuff, and I don't drink or smoke, but a lot of stuff I've forgotten. It's just that much that was happening at the time. But yeah, Rome was cool. He was with the right people.
He was doing his thing.
Yeah, he with the right people. For
There
sure.
you go, man. I'm just consistent, bro. It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? But I think, just from my time there, man, Hampton was incredible because you kind of saw the difference in people. Like Philly, DC, New York, Northern Virginia. We had a little bit of Boston, not too crazy in the South, Baltimore. But, we all got along with each other. Like, you kind of had to get along with each other. And you put
It took a while.
It took a while, and it was cliquish, though. It was cliquish, you know what I'm saying? But as you got older, it was just like, look, we're trying to get out of here. It wasn't about so much of the games and people like, where you're from. It don't matter where you're from. We're trying to get through AP calculus or whatever you're trying to, like, if you could help me finish, get an A in this class, then that's what we're about. But the social aspect was incredible. I mean, I didn't know what go-go music was until I went to Hampton University, right? And so to see a pool hall or some kind of bingo hall, saw a bingo hall get rented out and they bring these people down. And I mean, the excitement through campus is a fever pitch. Yeah. And like he said, we have a mutual friend, Riley. Riley's from Seattle, right? And so Seattle had a nice little black contingent at Hampton. But Riley would be able to hang out with DC, and then your friend Colin, who's from Akron, Ohio, you know what I mean? So it was just a good mix of just everybody. And the DC crew was obviously location wise, it was deep. You know what I'm saying? Like you would get to know some of them, but some you couldn't because of just of classes and majors and stuff like that. But Hampton was an eye-opening, life-changing experience for all of us. And again, Silas is one of the people that was coolest folks that I met down there, and we're still tight to this day, which is great. I love what I'm saying. So,
and Abdul, real quick, I know you are the shoe guy, right? You're not a shoe guy; you are the shoe guy, right?
I don't know about that, but
yeah, I think you are. I think you are. Hampton was also known at that time for really having trendsetters from all over the country, right? The Philly guys, New York guys, LA guys, whatever, right? And when I see these conversations online about New Balance, the flyest guys from every city went to Hampton, right? None of them had on New Balance at that time, other than DC. None of them had on phone positives. The guys from Houston had phone positives too, right? That was it. Houston and DC were the only guys doing that. The New Balance thing, definitely only us. Yeah. And so when I see these conversations online, like I'm always intrigued just by watching it because I'm like, I know no one could even ever say that. It wasn't even close.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, man. It's some of these people that like to comment on this sort of situation have absolutely no idea what the fuck they're talking about. You can't talk to me being a 21 or 22-year-old about where the trend of New Balance started. Like, come on. So, and I mean, I've talked to people, even New Yorkers who are older than me, in their 50s, have known guys have been like, yo, I learned about how fly New Balance was from coming down here, and then I took it back with me. And we always it's sort of a thing where I think New York has always been the mecca of fashion to the rest of the world. It's the gateway that everybody looks at for inspiration when it comes to fashion. So they're able to magnify styles and trends a lot faster than a smaller market like a DC, Maryland, Virginia, or Baltimore are able to do. So I think they get a lot of the credit for it, but not necessarily being the guys who actually started things, So I mean that's just how things are.
At this time, this is when foams were coming out. The
97 foams came out. That's the year.
But from 97 to 01, 02, that's when all that posits, all that stuff. And Hampton, Virginia, and that part of Virginia, you could get everything, though. Like, you could literally get every shoe.
Yeah, you walk in the store and get it.
They had multiple malls and
the mom and pop stores down there were crazy.
Crazy. So,
I mean, Silas, I don't know if you noticed, but like 15 years ago, a friend of ours, like cleaned out a mom and pop store's inventory from the 80s from down there, from 757.
Really?
Thousands and thousands and thousands of pairs of sneakers and brought them back up here. in U-Hauls. And yeah, it was literally dead stock sneakers. So that's where the term came from. When you hear about dead stock sneakers, people normally are like, oh, it's just an unopened pair of sneakers. But the term dead stock literally means stock that was left to die, rotting.
Yeah.
That's where the term came from. So one of our homies, his parents' friends, had 4 or 5 stores in that area from like the 80s all the way to the early 2000s. And this was literally dead stock inventory left off in warehouses. And he copped all of it and brought it up here. And they were selling it at Commonwealth for a long time.
I still have a couple pairs.
Oh, 62. I have a bunch. I have a pair of original Bruins from 1982.
Me too.
The green suede joints. I got the black one. Green. Some white family, I don't remember. I never actually met the family, but you know, they had a shitload of stores down there.
Patreon.com/What's a Podcast. As Silas is sort of I guess getting ready to leave Hampton, I sort of found my like vehicle to, I guess, express myself. Right. And so this was online, this was Nike Talk, this was all these places, but I had a blog that I just started out of the blue. Like blogging was just kind of new. And you know, at this point in time, Silas and I we're cool at this point. Like we're already tight, we're, you know what I'm saying? And so at the same time, Silas found his voice and began to like publish at least once a week, maybe twice a week, but at least once a week, I believe, on my blog, where he would just speak about whatever, you know what I'm saying? I think the Silas that we see today and how well he speaks and things of that nature literally started on my blog, where I was linking like sneakers and music and albums and all this other stuff. And once a week it would be like, here comes Silas with just like real like commentary. Yeah, commentary. Like, how important do you think that was to where you are today?
I'm laughing because I remember the night that I said to you, man, let me jump on your blog once a week. We were outside the Northern, you, Ryland, and I. And I think I had seen the blog a couple of times. And I just randomly said it to you, like, man, let me jump on that joint, like, on, you know, once a week. And you were like, all right, bet. I didn't expect you to say it like that fast, right? All right, bet. So, you know, for me, a lot of people who know me now, they know that, you know, I do a lot of work in the community, and a lot of my commentary now is more about wellness development, more serious, right? But for me, at one point, I really had a thought about going into writing in like the comedy space.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're going to be like a stand-up?
Not quite.
Sitcom.
I wanted to write for like sitcoms, write commercials.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to also do a magazine. Like, you know, when you get on an airplane, I had this vision of having something humorous to read when you're on an airplane. That's exactly what I was thinking about. Like, what could I do to entertain somebody for like 45 minutes to an hour, right?
While
when they just sit there, nowhere to go. And a couple of friends of mine, we used to just like go back and forth on email, just like making funny stories and jokes and things like that. And so Rome let me do what was called Sal's Corner on Mondays.
Yeah.
And, you know, I started driving people I knew to his site, driving the traffic there. And sometimes I would have a serious sort of theme within the joke, right? It's kind of like, you know, putting the medicine inside the food, so to speak. But we did that for a long time, Rome, like maybe 2 years, like every Monday.
2 years. Yeah, every Monday, 2 years.
Damn.
It was like, I'm trying to tell y'all, like, Silas.
We might have to pull up that blog on way back.
Yeah, I would love to. But I get
today.
the crazy thing is that you said that, you know, upon graduation, you sort of came home and saw the difference in, like, you know, the community members, folks you grew up with, and so. What was the like impetus to say, all right, I'm fresh out of college and I kind of want to give back versus let me just kick my feet around for a year or two before I can find myself?
Yeah. You know, before Google, people would just call my phone, right? So friends of mine that needed help with different things. And it just never stopped. My phone kept ringing. I was still living in the neighborhood, and I just found myself almost having like these impromptu office hours, going out and hanging out around the way in front of the store or on the stoop. And in the midst of having, fun and laughing and joking, guys were really pulling me to the side with challenges, real challenges. I've had some very serious moments with guys who were really trying to change their lives. And that just compelled me to do like this, what I call informal case management, where I'm just helping a guy along the way, trying to get his ducks in a row. And then I met my wife, and that was probably about 4 years after I got home. And I just felt this bug to do more. And again, Rome, just like with you, when I, said something random to you and you were like, just do it. I told my wife, who was my, girlfriend at the time, I said, I want to do more. And she was like, just do more. And that led me to running for ANC commissioner, advisory neighborhood commissioner. I won that election. Wow. Yeah, I was ANC for like 3 terms.
Wow.
So I served.
This is like right out of college.
Maybe like 4 or 5 years after.
You're still young as shit.
Yeah, I'm young. Yeah, very young. 26, 27.
Wow. Yeah.
Didn't know what I was doing at all. But, just wanted to be active and wanted to help my neighbors. And it was probably the most honorable thing that I've been able to do, is really like help people that watch me grow up. And that experience centered everything else you've seen from me since then, in terms of like my passion for helping people, but most importantly, really putting the right information in front of people. My sort of professional mantra is, giving people the information to make better decisions. Yeah. So, everything I've done in my professional life since that point has always been about, I've got access to information. You need to see this, and this should be able to impact you in a positive way.
What are your thoughts on running for some sort of office today?
So the further along I get in this journey, the less I want to do that. When I was young, 26, 27, I definitely thought about running for council. But what I found is that being an advisor is more of a space that I want to be in. The life of an elected official, especially with a 5-year-old and a wife, I want to be able to come home at night, just, lay it down.
Turn off the phone and relax.
Yeah. And so I ended up working in the council 2 different occasions. I worked for Kenyon McDuffie on 2 occasions. Recently, I was with him from 18 to the end of 22. And I told him when I left, if we were doing anything else as a group, meaning him and the rest of the staff, I would be all in forever, right? Great staff. He's a great leader, great staff, but that work is taxing.
Yeah.
And a lot of my work in the last iteration in his office, I dealt a lot with young people being killed. Scenes. When I think back to my 4 or 5 years, all the great work we did, I'm not taking anything away from that, but what really stands out is the first week that I was there, a kid that I was kind of mentoring got killed, right? And I went to his crime scene in my neighborhood. And there was a 5-year-old girl who was hit by a car and she died. There was a girl that was shot in the crossfire at 14th and Rhode Island Avenue Northeast. I mean, I could go on and on and on. People that are under the age of 21 that I went to those crime scenes, and that really defined, how I remember that experience. And, it was so many tragic moments like that stand out. And with all the great work we did outside of that, it's those moments where you're like, you got to look families in the face and tell them it's going to be okay. And sometimes you don't know that it's going to be okay.
Or that it's not going to be okay.
And you still
got to tell them.
Yeah.
You still got to tell them. And the thing is, people see a lot of glory in running for office, but, I tip my hat to people like Kenyon because I know he truly cares, which is why I'm sold out to be a supporter of his. But, when you are sold out for the work, there's not as much glory in it as people think.
Yeah.
Kenyon McDuffie is currently the council member of
he's at large now. He's
at large, right?
Yeah. So I worked with him when he was Ward 5, but he's now at large.
Yeah. Okay.
Listen, people, it's getting good. We're 40 minutes in. Patreon.com/Whats'a. I'm just saying.
Pay the $5.
We pay the $5. We'll give y'all an extra 5 minutes before we gotta, you know what I'm saying? Because this is such a great conversation. You're learning so much. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say before. I think one thing that we should add into the free portion, at least, if people, so people can kind of understand that. Last week, Silas, we talked about the mayor's new initiative about this bill, and honestly, I'm not a very smart person, so the secure DC bill. When they talked about it, Rome explained it a little bit, and there was some sort of laws that just seemed very much like over policing to me. And I just did not know that whether these sort of rules are actually going to be beneficial to public safety, because it seemed like, what was it, Rome? Like if 2 or 3 people are hanging out on a stoop, they have the right to just
not even a stoop.
Everyone?
Not even a stoop.
Just walking anywhere.
Yeah. So if 2 people are hanging out, they can be considered like a threat, I guess.
And is that citywide, or is that only in these? Like
citywide.
Okay, so it's not like these red zone that they're putting up.
But they can also like designate any area as like a hotbed for
like a red zone.
A red zone. Yeah.
I got a call yesterday from a friend who said he witnessed somebody getting arrested yesterday in
over that.
Yeah, very new established neighborhood. So was it yesterday? It was 2 days ago, I think. What's today? Wednesday. So yeah, it was Monday because the announcement. So there was an announcement of the first drop of neighborhoods last week, and then Monday I saw on Washingtonian Probs the second set. And this guy that I know, we used to do work in this neighborhood where he was, and he stopped by to go check on one of the kids who's now an adult that we used to work with. And in the process of him engaging with him, right across the street, another kid that we knew got arrested. And I don't know what the outcome of it was or the details of it, but the short of it is they have already began instituting those things from the Secure DC bill. Just to go back real quick to Kenyon McDuffie for a minute, back in 2016, he passed a public health approach to law enforcement. It was a big bill, just like this one, called the NEAR Act, Neighborhood Engagement Achieves Results Act. And there were like 20 statutes within that bill. And it was really about taking a public health approach. What I mean by that is merging medical and mental health professionals with law enforcement. This is like in that Trayvon Martin period, but not quite George Floyd. So we knew it was coming where, an individual police officer has to make a discretionary decision, right? And so we were trying to really work on this bill to make sure that the people that are on the front line are well informed of, the people that they are serving and how to engage appropriately to avoid like these sort of fatal conflicts that take place between,
and this was exactly or very much in line with what the defund police initiative was asking for, right? Defunding the police, when that came out during the Black Lives Matters protests, was not really getting rid of police officers altogether, but taking away some of that funding and putting it into other resources of experts, whether it's mental health or anything like that, who could show up at non-emergency calls and be able to assess the situation from an expert's point of view. And being like, yo, this is what we need to do. Put your guns away, police officers. It's not necessary. We have somebody who's sick here, and let's address it in this certain manner. So that's. It seems like Kenyon McDuffie was even early with trying to have this sort of initiatives put in place.
Yeah, there was a model in Oakland they were using that he got a chance to talk to some of the people at the core of that movement. They came out here. He met with them. And that was sort of like the birth of him saying, hey, let's look at that model, but then let's try to cater it in a way that fits into DC. I think sometimes we just like to, do the whole cookie cutter thing, but he
copy paste. It's not always going to work.
he took pieces of that, and he actually sat with people like me, Tony Lewis, Ron Moulton, Trayon White before he was a council member. We sat together in a series of meetings and helped shape this legislation.
Wow.
And today, some of the statutes are enacted, but not all of them are fully funded. But the parts that are enacted have had an impact in a positive way on communities. There's actually a graduation this Friday for a program that's within that legislation called the Pathways Program, where the city identifies about 25 to 30 super at-risk individuals, mostly men, and they do a 12-week cohort where they get them sort of like turned around 180-degree, change. They do job training. Once they graduate, they get placed, into DC government jobs or with companies that partner with the agencies that are training these guys. But the long short of it is they're now on their 15th cohort. And if you do the math roundabout 15 times 25, I mean, that's a lot of guys, right?
Yeah.
I would say probably 75 to 80% of those guys like really hit it and just go. Everybody's not going to get it, but the lion's share of those guys have just turned their lives around. And we actually
that's a success story.
Yeah, it's a success story.
Yeah.
I can name some guys that have really sometimes we sell people short, and our expectations for at-risk people are not the same for ourselves. But I know some guys who were in the streets. They went through that program and they making like six figures now. They buying houses. They got families. Like they just totally turn their lives around. So it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But the bill,
I'm sorry.
My fault. Go ahead.
No, you good. Go ahead.
No, that's what we want to know about is what do you think about this mayor's bill? Yeah. And do you think it's is it sufficient to, one, to stop crime, and two, is it going to add to more fuck shit with problems with the police?
So I think there's a difference between actually being safe and feeling safe. And those two things can be accomplished, but not every idea accomplishes both of those things. I think this bill makes people feel safe, right? Or at least, when the ball hits the bat, right? But where the ball goes from here, we don't know yet, right? Now, I think some people, certain segments feel safer because of this bill, right? The other flip side of it is that when you look at DC jail, it is more populated today than it was last year this time. Yeah. So you have more people locked up, but you still feel unsafe. Do you really feel safe by locking people up, right? And in my opinion, you don't. Like the jail is overcrowded and people still feel like, hey, I don't want to go out at night. I might get carjacked. The only way you really get out of this thing is by eliminating poverty and creating opportunity. And that's a harder thing to do than just to put a bill together that locks people up. Yeah. But I think we also have gotten to the point where the crimes are so heinous in terms of how they're reported and what we perceive them to be, that it's hard not to do something. And I think people that are in positions of power, they felt the need to do something, and this is what they came up with, but it's not enough. Even if you do this, you got to do some other things too.
Right. Yeah. That was exactly one of the points we made last week, and we talked about it last week, Silas, is that it almost feels like things had just gone so far left that they felt that they need to go all the way right. Yeah. To try to remedy some of that shit. But instead of going all the way right, have real laws put in place that are kind of in the middle that also don't violate people's civil rights. Two people walking down the street and police has the right to just roll up on you. And let's be honest, this means two black kids walking down the street or two black people walking down the street, because it's never going to happen to two white people walking down the street. That's never going to happen. So when you have two black people walking down the street and they get violated, I just think that it opens up the door for police officers to make more mistakes than they would have any other time. Because, if I'm just walking down the streets and let's say I'm not aware of this new law coming in place and a police officer just rolls up on you, you feel violated, and there's chances you're going to buck back. So when you talk back to that police officer, he's going to get angry. And now the situation is just going to escalate because of this new law.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, am I wrong or like?
No, I think every situation right now, at least in this early stage, is going to be a case by case, right? But what this bill, I think, has done, from my opinion, is it's widened the scope of possibilities, good and bad. Yeah. And I don't know if that's good or bad, right? You know what I mean? It's widened the range of
to be seen.
Actually happen, what can happen? So it remains to be seen. And the weather is about to break. People are going to be outside.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
Part of our culture. I don't know if you guys saw this interview, but Ryan Coogler, who was the director of Black Panther, he was on Hot 97, and he talked about being in a number of African countries in preparation for shooting the movie. And when he went to one village in one country, there was a bunch of young people hanging outside the house. And the woman who was like the matriarch of that village was like, we put them out there on purpose to show our wealth. So all our young guys, our 13 and 15 and 19-year-olds, we put them out in front of our property to let people know, like, we're strong. And my mom and dad are from South Carolina. And on Saturday nights, they would dress up and go to the local corner store and hang out. So hanging outside is like a generational thing for Black people, whether it be on the continent of Africa, South Carolina, or Northeast DC, right? We're going to be outside. I'm an upstanding citizen, public servant, you name it. On a Friday, I pull up around my neighborhood and I holler at my homies from time to time.
You're outside.
Yeah.
Right outside, right? Yeah. So, that's a cultural nuance that if you have not been exposed to that, but you're now chairing a committee that is going to oversee the implementation of a bill that could undermine that. If you don't have that knowledge, then you're not going to see the value in that.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy. Listen, folks, we hate to do it.
It's over.
All out pregame.
The pregame is over, baby.
Pay that
Pay the $5. Patreon.com/Whats'a podcast. Obviously, we appreciate everybody's tapped in thus far. Again, if you are, obviously paying the $5, then, we'll be right back in 1 second. For everybody else, thank you so much, and we'll see you next week. Peace.